Hi guys, welcome to Module 6. We are going to be talking about developing the project schedule. At this point, you've created the work breakdown structure and all the tasks that are going to be done to complete your project. You have also been familiarized with the RACIX matrix, as well as you've started to develop the communications plan. All of these are essential items that are going to go into your schedule. It is going to be in calendar format, and it is the main output from all this planning that you have been currently working on in order to implement your project. It is not easy to develop an accurate schedule. In fact, it's the reason it's not easy is because many times the scope of projects either increase or decrease depending on many times how the schedule drives the budget, and we're going to get into that in a few slides. But it is it's really a foundational item of your project, and it's very important to have a good schedule. You can see it really is a chief integration document. Again, it's merging all of the items together. You can read through a list of a really good schedule. Of course, out of the scope of this class, some of these items we've talked about, but we haven't actually been able to create one due to the size of this class, and also, the scope of the class, right? It would be out of scope to create all of these documents. This is something that you would do in a professional work environment. But I do want you to be familiar with each item listed here. I will point out key milestones. That is something that you can look at in your projects. A key milestone might be the end of a phase. We have looked at our phases in terms of planning, implementation, and post-implementation evaluation. So the end of each of those phases would be a key milestone. So again, look through here, make sure you are familiar with each of these items. You can, as I mentioned earlier, the project budget is really, the schedule drives the project budget. It also outlines the amount of time that it's going to take to complete the project, of course. And time is also money. And that's a resource. You have human resource that costs money to have people complete tasks on your project. So it's very important to look at a schedule and to look at all of the items in place and to make sure that this is the most efficient schedule that you can have. It also provides an opportunity to look at what if scenarios, what if analysis, right? So have I allowed enough time between the actual implementation of the event and acquiring all the necessary resources? Have I adequately prepared for that? Have I provided that buffer like we discussed in some of the work breakdown structure items? Very important there. You can see that the goal of the schedule development process is really to represent all of the work that has to be done. It needs to be realistic. It needs to be bought in from your stakeholders. Everyone needs to agree upon this, because if you come up with a timeline and then you show it to your stakeholders and they're like, no, not at all. We needed this absolutely a month earlier. This is not going to work for us, right? Of course, we would want to make sure all these things were discussed on the front end, but this is something where it really outlines how everyone has to be on the same page here. You can see all of these key inputs for building a schedule. I'm going to let y'all read through those, but you can see that our very first item here is really developing that work breakdown structure, which is what you have done. You can also see in the schedule, it allows you to define task relationships. It really allows you to see what tasks can be done simultaneously. If you need to wait a certain amount of time in order to begin a secondary process because you're waiting on resources to arrive, that's very important. Also, developing that preliminary schedule where you can add to and take away from it, again, depending on the scope, increasing or decreasing as it so often does in many projects. You can also, again, perform that reality check, looking to see if there's a way we can become more efficient. This is very important. Looking for efficiencies. Many times project managers and stakeholders, they love efficiency. Can we do this with less time? Can we do this in less time? Usually, many Americans, we wanted it yesterday. So same kind of mentality here. Can we shorten the schedule? Can we create a more efficient route to get the finished product with the quality that we determined at the beginning? Very important there. It's important to walk through the schedule, making sure that you are paying attention to all the fine details, that this has all of the information that you need to actually execute your project and execute it well. This is also the time to sequence the work. And I know that may sound very obvious, right? But it is something you've created. We have looked at within the work breakdown structure. You listed all the tasks that need to be done. However, we did not put dates on them, and we did not put them in the order that we wanted them to be completed. So, for example, many of you put vendor first. That was very common. However, you want to make sure that the vendor is secured before you set up the music, maybe the DJ, right? Because what if the DJ is not approved to play at the space that you've actually booked? These are all, again, very contingent upon some certain steps have to be taken. Same with the catering. Many times venues have specific approved list of caterers, so you can't book the caterer until you have booked the venue. Again, all of this comes into play when you are organizing and making sure that your project schedule is in order. So again, what can be done at the same time? Again, that efficiency, making sure that you can do things efficiently. And also it provides another option for someone who is much more comfortable looking at something visually as opposed to you telling them. It really gives you a nice smooth outline for how things are going to go and what to expect every day. You can see kind of a mock schedule here. In this line here, all these things can be done at the same time. You can see develop vendor requirements, develop technical requirements, develop future state business requirements. Again, all of this is represented to be done at the same time. And again, you're taking it through all of the steps to complete the vendor shortlist. It's very important one of the things we've emphasized over and over again is creating and making decisions with your team. The schedule is no different. The schedule should be done as a team activity, maybe a preliminary rough draft of the schedule, opening it up to the team, having their input. Remember, we talked about the buy-in of actual goals and the actual work that has to be done. Those who are doing the work should be involved in the planning part of the work. That is incredibly important in terms of creating a synergistic team, in terms of driving the agenda and the project forward. You can see many of this building that preliminary schedule. I'm going to let y'all read through all the nitty-gritty details, but you can see here the critical path. This is something I want you to be familiar with. Let me pull this up. It identifies the minimum amount of time that a project can be completed in. So you're looking for all of those task dependencies. You're also looking at the items that can be done at the same time. What has to be done before we do step B? If we book the vendor, if we book the actual venue, can we book, once we have that solidified, then we can book catering, and then we can book our music. Again, those are task dependencies, and that's one of the things that the schedule shows. But I do want you to be familiar with the critical path. So spend some time looking at the critical path. There's also a video that I have linked online. Again, performing that reality check is very important. Having multiple people look at your, multiple members of your team who are creating it and using this appropriately. There is a lot of software out there for managing projects. Lots of Asana. There's Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Projects. There is Monday.com. There are a variety of management software. And each company that you work for will probably have something different. This is one of those things that I will give you some boundaries here, and you will be using some online resources, but we are not using one specific project software because of the diversity in the US and the diversity within companies to use different types of software. But again, it's very important to look at the critical path and see what things can be shortened in order to meet those stakeholder expectations. Very important keys there. Two more key takeaways from the project schedule is it's important to not only review it with the schedule with your project team, but also to review it with the stakeholders. It allows that additional buy-in. It also keeps you on track, keeping you and your team professional and presenting in a visual way, such as visual tools or charts. Again, it instills additional confidence in your stakeholders that you are handling the job and that you are communicating appropriately with them. Very important. And one more thing is documenting and clearly communicating all scheduling assumptions. Just because you as a team might be assuming something at the team level does not mean that that is transparent to your stakeholders. It's very important that you communicate appropriately. I look at every single class that I teach as a project, and you can see that I have my expectations are outlined at the very beginning of a semester. You can also, this is something I use individually, is I create a schedule at the beginning of every single semester. You might create something similar. It might be in your planner, but where I go day by day of what has to be done within each of my classes. And again, many times, depending on the size of the project, it can be larger or smaller depending on what you're actually taking on. But again, it is a very important document. And it will drive so much more of the project, making sure that you have a firm foundation and a firm schedule that is very communicated very well to your stakeholders, as well as created by your team members. All right, that is our schedule discussion in a nutshell. Have a great day. Thanks.